Hey, what up, guys? Thanks for checking out the Ironman 70.3 Chattanooga course info, tips and tricks, and Q&A. Speaking of that Q&A, thanks to everyone who has submitted questions over the last week or so. Uh, Several of those were already included here in the deck. A couple of them I've integrated in, and then also saved some for our Q&A there at the end. So if you have any questions either now or that come up throughout the presentation, submit those via that GoToWebinar widget that is there on your screen. And I will get to as many of those as I can. I know you guys are tapering triathletes, so I certainly don't want to keep you up past your bedtime. So I will get to as many as I can. But if I don't answer your question here this evening, I will follow up with you by email in the next day or two. So you'll get an answer to your question, whether it's tonight or in the next day or so. I'll also be sending out a replay of this. So if you can't make the whole thing, or if you want to watch it again, share it with a training partner. That'll be going out in the next couple of days as well. My name is John Mayfield. I am a full-time triathlon coach. I have the great honor and privilege of working in triathlon as my career. I am passionate about working with athletes, and like this evening, I just want to give back. I want to give something to the group. I want to share my experience, my education, so that you can hopefully have a little bit better experience, a little bit less stress, a little bit more confidence as you head into your race. I am both USAT Level 2 and Ironman U certified, and I have worked with hundreds of athletes from first timers to professionals and everyone in between. I work exclusively with long course athletes, 70.3 and Ironman distance athletes, and again, have coached numerous times at many venues. So, again, just trying to pass along some of that information from all of those years. So, a couple pre-race tips, things to take care of before race day. It's critical to stay hydrated. Now, the forecast is actually looking pretty cool. I would say even a little cooler than normal, but that doesn't mean that we can neglect our hydration. So, it is absolutely critical to maintain hydration throughout the race. And that starts with showing up at the start line with the proper levels of hydration. So between your travel, your time taking care of things before the race, things like checking in, dropping off your bike, all those kinds of things, you can get behind on hydration pretty easily. So my recommendation here is to have a water bottle basically with you at all times in those last couple days as race day approaches. So just kind of sip on that bottle throughout the day. Make sure that you're staying up both on your hydration as well as your electrolytes. So again, a water bottle, preferably with some electrolytes in there or something like that. I like vitamin water in those days leading into the race, and I'll talk a little bit about that coming up on something else. But whatever works for you, whatever's going to keep you full and hydrated and set to go for a race day. Kind of partnered with that is limit the time on your feet. So as already mentioned, there's several things that you're going to need to do in those last couple of days leading into the race, but you really want to save your legs for race day. So make sure that you're not overdoing it, not spending too much time on your feet. So they're those things you can't avoid, things like check-in and your bike drop, but Chattanooga is a super neat little town. Lots of really cool stuff to do. Lots of stuff that would keep you on your feet. Things like Lookout Mountain or the aquarium or some of the other things down there. Be careful with that. So maybe do those earlier in the week if you can, or maybe save those for after race day. Great active recovery activities, walking around the aquarium or something like that. But do what you can to minimize that. Don't do anything wasteful. And then things like compression socks or the compression boots, those will also be great in helping to offset some of the effects of that. Check out the course. So we're going to be talking pretty extensively here this evening about the swim, bike, and run course, and I'll show you some maps and some pictures and give you some descriptions. But it's kind of subjective. It's everyone is going to have a little bit different interpretation of what a steep climb is, what a fast descent, what a sharp turn. That's going to mean something different to everyone. So I always recommend going and actually putting eyes on the course before you experience it on race day. We don't want any surprises on race day. So going and actually seeing the course is going to allow you to game plan for everything, know exactly what you're in store for, and again, avoid those surprises on race day. So easiest thing is to go out and drive the bike course. It's actually a pretty nice drive and not all that long. So go out and you can kind of see the turn by turn. You can see the hills. You can see where the aid stations are going to be. Those are generally marked several days before the race with brightly colored duct tape. So you'll know exactly where those are, even in relation to an ascent or a descent or a turn. Sometimes I question why they put the aid stations where they do. But again, if it's right before or after a turn on an uphill, on a downhill, it's really good to know that before you experience that on race day. So same thing with the swim. It's good to kind of see where it is, the start, where the finish is, the swim exit, how you transition over, and then same thing for the run. So kind of a recommendation there. Not all of the run course is accessible before the race, but the part along the path and all the bridge, maybe go out and ride your bike on that section, run through your gears, make sure everything is working properly, and that's a great way to check out the run course. Read the athlete guide. Even if you are an experienced Ironman athlete, 7.3 athlete, there are oftentimes one or two little nuggets that are there in the athlete guide that may serve critical as the race comes and goes. Sometimes there are little things in there that are little caveats specific to each individual race. Sometimes even year to year, there can be small changes. So check out the athlete guide. And then just a couple of recommendations while you are in Chattanooga. I've had the privilege of traveling to almost every city that host an Ironman event, and um, Chattanooga is a really neat one. And I've said this before that I probably never would have gone to Chattanooga, Tennessee, had it not been for Ironman racing there. And it is such a neat little city. So glad that I stumbled upon it. I've been several times, and I really enjoy my time there. So recommendations, just maybe this is earlier in the week after the race, or maybe for your support crew. Breakfast at Puckett's. Puckett's is a really neat little restaurant. It's right there on the river in the downtown area. It's going to be very close to the Ironman Village, and they've got a really good breakfast. And then you can come back later in the evening, and they've got a little stage. But man, I've seen some really cool acts there at Puckett's. It's pretty common to have some relatively established musicians come down from Nashville and perform there at Puckett. So you never know who's going to show up, but they've got actually some pretty good talent that comes out for that. And then a little bit further away. Is get a cocktail at Stir. It's a really neat bar. They've got some really cool bartenders, make some really cool drinks. That's a little bit further away from the area that the race is happening at, over there near the railroad station, which is a cool thing to check out as well. So just a couple recommendations while you are in town. So as far as checking out the course, as I mentioned, do recommend getting in a swim prior to, but the actual swim course is not available until race day. So there is still boat traffic and other dangers. So recommendation is to go right up to the dam. There is a park up there that actually allows for open water swimming. It's just a real short drive from that downtown area, very easy to get to, plenty of parking, and there's going to be triathletes there all week leading into the race. So I always advocate for open water swimming with a partner, but it's going to be chances are if you're by yourself, it's not going to be hard to find a friend out there. So this is going to give you the opportunity to actually get in the water, so you'll know exactly what you're in store for. You'll know exactly what the water feels like, what the water quality is, clarity, those kinds of things. The only thing that's going to be different up here on this side of the dam is going to be the current. So a little bit different there, but you'll get a real good feel for what you're going to experience. Test out your wetsuit, your goggles, swim cap, all that kind of stuff. Get comfortable knowing exactly what you're going to be in store for on race day. Speaking of race morning, they will be updating you throughout the week on the water temperature. Historically, this has been a wetsuit legal race, but it is close. So I think I already mentioned there is some rain in the forecast over this next week as we head into race day. So that's going to help keep that water temperature down. But again, anything can happen, so be prepared. Last year the water temperature was 74. Year prior to that, 72. And just as a reminder, it is wetsuit legal up to and including 76.1 degrees. So we will see what it is. But again, generally, when you check in, they'll have it posted there. In that Ironman village, there'll be a sign or something that as they're testing that throughout the day. There'll also be some updates on the current, so that can fluctuate even daily as well. Transition opens at 4:30, so you'll have the opportunity to go down there and set up your transition area, pump up your tires, all of that, and then you'll need to hop on a shuttle to the swim start. Those also start at 4:30 a.m. Those are only accessible by athletes. So if you've got support crew that is coming out with you on a race morning, they will need to provide their own transportation or walk down there to the swim start. So about a mile and a half walk from the transition area down to the swim start. Pro race starts at 6:50, and then 10 minutes later, the age group race will begin at 7 o'clock. So the swim start, as mentioned, is about a mile and a half upstream. There'll be those shuttles that will take you there. Once you arrive in that area, you will get into a self-seated corral based on your expected swim time. So I believe the first grouping is 25 minutes or faster, and then it's every 5 minutes up until the 110 cutoff. From there, once the race actually starts, you'll file out onto the dock and jump in. Nice, easy start. It's a pretty easy process, not a whole lot to it, and actually a pretty easy start based on some of the other races. So a couple tips for the swim start. Get cued early. So that's going to mean kind of getting an early start on everything, which I always think is a good idea. So getting up a little bit early, getting the breakfast in, heading down there, getting your transition all set up, and then hopping on one of the earlier shuttles. So I think it's just a good idea to get down there to this queuing station where you can kind of settle down. You can get your wetsuit on if it's wetsuit legal, and just kind of relax, decompress, and it's one of those times where it's actually kind of nice to have a little bit of time just to kind of wait. So my recommendation is to get down there, and then too, oftentimes they'll have these queues are kind of in these corrals, and if you are one of the latter ones to get in, it can be difficult to get up to where you're trying to get to. So just kind of a almost a courtesy thing to get in there early and not be one of those last people that's kind of pushing and making your way through there. So don't queue slower than expected. So this is something a lot of times, especially some of the more apprehensive swimmers will say, yeah, I may be swimming 40, 45 minutes, but I'm going to queue at 50 just in case I'm swimming slow. This is going to be disadvantage to you and those that you are queuing up with. So that means you're going to end up swimming over people, that kind of thing. So I would say if anything, be a little optimistic, and definitely go with what you feel is reasonable for you. That's going to be best for you as well as those fellow swimmers around you. Don't panic. Now, obviously, this is something we don't always have complete control over. There are several things that you can do before jumping in the water that can really help with this. Things like box breathing, visualization, definitely practicing in advance, even like I mentioned, going up there to the dam in the days prior. If you are prone to panic, one of the best things you can do is just expose yourself over and over. So in these next 10 days or so prior to the race, get in the open water as much as you can, get in some of this cooler water. So just get a feel for what you're going to experience, and just remind yourself that you're okay. So if you do panic, there are some things that we can do there as well. One thing is a sink down. So a sink down is just going underwater, exhaling, and then coming back up. It's going to be a little bit difficult to do if you're wearing a wetsuit, but that's also a great reminder that wetsuit is going to do a great job of keeping you up on the surface of the water. Just if it's immediate, you can grab onto the dock, you can grab onto one of the canoes or paddle boards that are going to be lining the course. So you're going to be okay, and you're really never that far from shore. So worst case scenario, you're going to be okay. You're going to be taken care of. But collect yourself, get in a couple breaths. You can hold on to those support boats, and then just get to swimming as quickly as you can. So when you jump into that water, your first sight line is going to be the island. So it's going to be pretty easy to see. There'll obviously be some sight buoys along the way, but start heading out to the McClellan Island. So it is a 1.4 mile swim course, so a little bit different than the standard 1.2 miles in a 70.3. And the reason for that is with the, I say new, it's been a couple years now since they modified the swim course to provide that straight shot of one point to point. It has to just come out to 1.4 miles. Now, generally, the current is going to at least offset that. So even though it's 2/10 of a mile longer than the standard 70.3, it still generally is a faster swim than most of the 70.3 1.2 mile swims. So, uh, speaking of, that current will vary. There are several factors that will play into how swift that current is. Some years it is very swift, and it is going to be a big advantage, and you're going to be swimming real easy, real fast. Others, there's not much of a current, so it kind of depends on how much they're letting through the dam, how much rain there's been. Again, rain in the forecast, so you can keep an eye on that. There's some resources online that are showing the current flow rates, but again, that can fluctuate even on a daily basis. So keep an eye on that, especially once you arrive in Chattanooga. You can go and check those out. Uh, Generally, good water clarity. It's actually a really nice swim. It's not as murky as some of the other rivers, especially even in this region. Sometimes these rivers get kind of muddy, kind of dirty, but generally this stretch is pretty clear. So at least good enough for good visibility as we are swimming. And then this is a largely an east to west direction that we're going from the start to the finish. So the sunrise is generally pretty much behind the swim course. So I would say that your goggle selection is less of an issue so far as that goes. A lot of times we're having to take that into consideration. That sun is low on the horizon as it's beginning to rise, and depending on which way you're deciding to breathe, you'll be staring at the sun. So that factors into your goggle selection. Less of an issue here. So the good thing is you can go with a little bit lighter colored goggle, a little less tinted, which will increase your visibility, making those buoys and bridges and all that all the more easy to see. So sighting is obviously critical in a good swim. We want to swim straight. We don't want to swim longer than necessary. And the best way to do that is to sight off and stay on a straight line. And when we're not having to worry about the sun, we've got good clarity in the water. We've got good sighting objects on the horizon. And we're not having to wear real dark goggles. That all plays into really easy sighting and great opportunities for a nice straight swim. So, a couple tips for the swim course. The current is going to be strongest towards the center of the river. So, as long as you're comfortable getting a little further out from shore, you can kind of favor the middle. And that was part of the reason I suggested sighting off McClellan Island first. That's going to naturally put you out kind of where the current is, as well as provide you a very obvious sight line. Once you begin to get a bit closer to the island, from there you'll begin to sight off the three bridges that you will go under. So those again are they're great sighting lines. It's going to be real easy to see. It's going to be a lot easier than even just the buoys that are there. Super obvious where they are and where you're headed. Great opportunities for that. And then this is really going to depend on the current, how strong it is. But either way, you're going to want to start moving towards the red buoys relatively early. So you're going to kind of that last turn, so to speak, is kind of around that amphitheater where the athlete briefings are. There'll be two red buoys that you'll go between, and that's actually your only turn. You'll make a kind of a left turn there as you head to the exit. But the stronger the current, the more difficult it's going to be to get over to the side. But we've seen in years past when the current has been particularly strong, some athletes have even kind of been I don't want to say swept out, but the current has made it difficult for them to get over. So they've actually gone past where you would turn to exit to the ladder. But there's obviously going to be plenty of support out there. So just be aware and start heading over to those red buoys sooner than later. Pretty much everyone's ready to get out of the water. It's a great swim, but you'll be done. You'll be ready to get on to the bike. So most people are starting to move towards the exit. Don't generally have to prompt people too much to enjoy it. But really enjoy the swim. This is a neat one. Um, Really nice course. It's generally pretty fast, good water quality, good water temperature, just a really good swim. So be sure to enjoy it. So this is probably about halfway through the swim course. You're already past McCullen Island. You're about to hit those bridges. So you'll see there that lots of things that you can side on. Particularly those pillars that are supporting the bridge are going to be great sight lines from bridge to bridge. Obviously, exponentially bigger than the buoys, but even the buoys are still out there and serve as a great line to keep you good and straight. But lots of stuff to side off of. And also, you can see out there lots of support personnel. I mean, you're never really more than about 20 yards or so from someone that is there to help you. So it's a very safe swim, and you're going to be just fine. This is, as I mentioned, more that amphitheater where the athlete briefings are. We're headed towards the swim exit. You can see the red turn buoy that is signaling you to make this 90-degree turn and head to the exit. So this is just looking at it from the other side. So we obviously we see the bridges that we're coming through, head to the red buoys, make the turn, and then you have the exit here. These black inflatables are actually funneling you into the stairs. There will be several volunteers here that are helping you exit the water. They'll grab your hand, pull you up, help you kind of get your legs as you are exiting the swim. From there, you're going to head along this path here where these folks are hanging out, and that is going to lead you into the transition area. So a little bit further down that path, again, that exit's going to be right in this area. You'll head down this path, make a left turn, head up this ramp, and then into the transition area. So couple tips for transition. Know your location. This is a big transition. This is a big race. There are a lot of bikes out there. So if you don't know where your bike is, it's going to be pretty, you're going to be spending a decent amount of time trying to find it. And then if you're maybe on the wrong row, it's going to take a lot of steps and a lot of time for you to get over to the right row. So even the day before the race, as you're dropping off your bike, pay attention to the landmarks. And you can see here in the signs, sometimes they'll have like the rows labeled with letters. So just know what letter it is that you are. If there's a light or something like that, some kind of marker that you can cue off of to help you find your bike. And then once you do, it's important to be efficient. So kind of these next three kind of all go in tandem. Be efficient, pack minimally, and practice in advance. So when we're in transition, we want to limit the amount of movements that we make. We want to limit the amount of items, objects we have, so that we can get through there quickly and efficiently. You don't want to be making a whole lot of decisions in the transition area. You just want to execute your plan. So a part of having that well dialed in plan is practicing in advance. So know exactly what are those things that you're going to want to have as you're getting onto the bike. Obviously, you got to have your bike helmet, and then from there, it's really going to be kind of up to you what you have in that transition area, what order you do it. But practice in advance, get real smooth with that, and you'll be in and out in no time. And then a little tip here. Consider a go bottle. So I mentioned that in the days leading into a race, I like to sip on vitamin water. And for me, it's a win-win. I like the vitamin water itself, keeps me good and hydrated, has some electrolytes in it, but also has a bottle that's great for this go bottle. So what makes bottles like this, and certainly vitamin water is not the only one, but it has the larger mouth on it. So your standard water bottle has a pretty small, almost like dime size lid on it, so it doesn't pour out real quickly. The vitamin water bottle, and again, there's others like it, are more like a $half size, so much larger. So it's kind of easy to drink quickly from those. So that's kind of the intent of that Go bottle. So as coming out of the swim, it's probably been anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, maybe longer, I guess, since you had any intake of fluids and calories. So basically, from the last time you took in anything before the swim start to the swim exit and into transition, other than maybe some river water, you haven't taken in any nutrition, electrolytes, or hydration. So as we mentioned before, it's critical to stay up on all three of those things. So this Go bottle, for me in T1, I'll have just about six ounces of water, maybe a little bit more with that, and I will have a serving of my nutrition and my electrolytes in there. I'm a big fan of the Precision Fuel and Hydration products, so that's what I have in my bottle. So again, it's a serving of my nutrition as well as those electrolytes, and I'm getting about 6 ounces of water. So right before I take off, I grab that bottle, chug it down real quick, and that is just going to kind of get me started in my nutrition protocol as I head out onto the bike. Speaking of, we'll be heading out now onto the bike course. This is a really neat bike course. It's got a couple neat caveats to it, and it's quite scenic, quite pretty, and it's gonna do a great job of keeping you entertained. Some of the courses out there are a little bland. That is certainly not this course. You actually get to ride in two different states. You're going to be spending the majority of your time down there in Georgia. It's not a completely flat course by any means, but it's not a particularly hilly course as well. So I'd say it's rollers, and I would say again, all those definitions kind of vary. So go and see what it is. See exactly what those rollers are. I'm going to be talking about a couple of short, steeper climbs. So it's a good idea just to go experience those and see exactly what I'm referring to, because my definition is certainly possibly different than yours, and you don't want to be surprised on race day, as we already talked about. Generally, the roads are pretty good, especially once you cross into Georgia. The road quality is even better than what's in Tennessee. So there, the first stretch coming right out of transition does have some bad spots. But once you kind of get away from transition, and certainly once you cross over into Georgia, which is in the like 6 miles mark, you're spending your time in Georgia after that. Generally pretty good roads. There are several railroad track crossings, so this is obviously something to be very careful when you are going over those railroad tracks. Generally, they are covered with some sort of mat or a carpet that are going to minimize the impact of that. That's not guaranteed, but generally they will do that. And there is at least one set of tracks that is not exactly parallel, so or perpendicular, I guess would be the right word. So when we cross over those railroad tracks, they are perpendicular. Those are pretty easy to navigate over. Not really a high risk of a wheel getting stuck down in there. The ones that are a little bit more dangerous and you really have to be more careful of are those that are almost more parallel, or the ones that are more of like a diagonal as you're going across those. Be very, very careful on those. And then just make sure that your bottles, I would say before and after, are secure in your cages. So if you've had gone over one or two of these tracks already, and maybe your bottle has kind of screwed it up, or if you didn't get it back in the cage good when you took the bottle out, it can certainly eject on these. So one, be cognizant as you approach these to make sure your bottles are all the way down in those cages, and then afterwards as well. And then check out your folks around you, especially if you're somebody up ahead. If you see their bottle coming out, give them a heads up. One, that's just kind of a cool thing to do, helping out that fellow athlete to preserve their nutrition, preserve their bottle. But at the same time, you don't want that bottle coming out and potentially even taking you out. It's never fun to have to swerve around bottles or ride over bottles. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody. And this is one of those things where we're kind of taking care of each other. We're all in this together. So check out your bottles and those around you as you're going over those tracks. So the course is a net uphill out and that's as we are headed to the south. And then it is obviously a zero net gain back into transition, but it is a net downhill as you head back into town, back to the north. It is relatively flat through the section of Tennessee. So those first couple, maybe about 5 to 10 miles first getting started. There's a couple little bumps in there, but relatively flat. And then it really becomes more rolling once you kind of cross over into Georgia. There are fewer flat sections once you hit Georgia, and there are several short climbs, and we'll talk about a few of those. But again, generally nice rolling, lots of fun. Some a shift or two here or there, and then some others. You may end up shifting front rings. But again, know exactly what you need. So go out and check the course, see exactly what I'm referring to. Couple tips for the bike course. As I mentioned, right out of transition, be very, very careful. The road is a little bit rougher here. There are some cracks, possible traffic from both vehicles as well as lots of cyclists that are going to be leaving transition at the same time, especially if you are in kind of that bell curve of the swim times. So oftentimes, uh, depending on the event, that give or take uh, 45 minutes, that gets real crowded. If you swim 45 minutes, transition 5 minutes, or something like that. So around that time, give or take about 10 to 15 minutes either way, there are a lot of people that are exiting transition at that time. Now, good thing is there are some turns early on that can help break that up, and then we head into those rollers relatively early on, which helps break that up as well. But early on, just be very cognizant of the road conditions, the traffic, and there is a pretty decent climb that is pretty quick out of transition. So if you are going to be doing a flying mount and getting your shoes on, putting your shoes on in the pedals before you mount, be aware of that pretty quickly there's going to begin an uphill section. You can kind of see it here on the elevation chart. So pretty much immediately after leaving transition. So get the shoes on quick, or maybe even save it for the descent back down. Just be aware of that. Again, good idea to go and see exactly what that hill looks like, so you can have your plan all dialed in prior to the race. So, recommendations to settle in through town, start your nutrition, hydration, or cooling protocols. So, again, this is give or take the first 5 miles. This is where we're kind of coming around the curves, several 90-degree turns as we get in. And then once you head south on, make that turn at St. Elmo, that's where that long straightaway is going to begin. So, already said several times how important nutrition and hydration is. But now I'm including the cooling protocols. So I see this all the time, especially in Chattanooga. The run especially will get warm, and what we don't see, especially with these cool mornings. So the forecast right now, I believe, is showing morning temperatures in the low to mid 60s. So it's going to be nice and cool to start. So sometimes that can give us kind of a false sense of security that I don't really need to stay up on my hydration or my cooling protocols, but that's a mistake. I always say if it's a nice bike ride, it's going to be a hot run. So you kind of hope for and pray for a relatively cool or cold run, because that means the run is going to feel nice. So again, if it's nice and if it's warm on the bike, it's going to be hot for the run. So again, very critical that we maintain our core body temperature. As we begin to exceed a certain core temperature, our performance is going to drastically be reduced. So that's the body just preserving itself and taking care of it. So again, as that core temperature increases, our ability to perform and take advantage of all that training and all that potential that we have is going to be inversely related. It's going to go down. So critical to stay up on your nutrition, hydration, but also stay cool. So my recommendation here is to always take a cold water bottle at every aid station. So for me, what I do, I go through that aid station, I grab that cold water bottle. Even if I have a water bottle in one of my cages, it's probably there's aid stations approximately every 15 miles or so. So it's going to be 30 to 45 minutes old. So it's not going to be as cold as the one that they've got. So I'm going to ditch that warm bottle. I'm going to take that cold water bottle. First thing I'm going to do is take a big chug of it. So getting that cold water in, so cooling the core temperature from the inside. And then I'm going to spray my face, spray my body, all of that with that cold water. I can cool from the outside. And then I'll take one more chug of that cold water. And I may ditch the bottle in that trash zone, or I may store it for use later on prior to the next. So want to stay cool out there on the bike and just set up yourself for a good run. As I mentioned, once you head south on St. Elmo, that's going to begin that long straightaway. So this is a good time just to kind of, hopefully by now you've settled in, you're good to go. Now it's time to just ride arrow as much as you can and hit your pacing, your power, and have a great race from here. The rollers really begin somewhere around that state line. So again, you're going to cross over the state line relatively early. So here's mile 5. Here's the state line. So somewhere between mile 5 and 10, you're going to cross over, and that's really where we can see it's relatively flat. We have a bump, and then we're going to begin that net gain. That is uphill all the way to that U-turn point. When you are going up those hills, be sure to avoid cross chaining. So basically, what we want to do is keep the chain as straight as possible. The more of an angle that the chain is at, the more drivetrain loss we're going to have, the more friction. So you're going to lose power. So oftentimes it's either sometimes it's ego, sometimes it's just a lack of awareness, but we'll still be in that big gear, big ring in the front, and get way up the cassette in the back. That's going to really cause that cross chaining. So stay ahead of it. Shift earlier to that small ring as needed, and do what you can to keep that chain straight. That's going to allow you to transfer more of that power you're generating into speed. The last stretch of this before of the southbound section is downhill. And so you're going to get up some nice speed there at the end, but there is again a term I'm going to use, a pretty sharp turn that is going to then become an immediate climb. So I would say if you go and put eyes on any section of this entire course, this is the one to go see. Now, if you're going to go see this, it's pretty much the furthest point away, so you might as well go see the entire course. But this is very critical to know and strategize for, game plan for. Generally, there is a police vehicle, something like that, with some lights on. But yeah, as you're coming down here, you're approaching this U-turn. It's a little bit of a downhill, and then you're going to make this turn and immediately turn into a climb. It's not real long. It is pretty steep, but as you safely make that turn, you're going to lose a lot of that momentum of coming down that hill. So for most people, it's going to be a good idea to go ahead and shift over into that smaller ring and have a game plan for summiting this little climb right here. You can see it here on the elevation chart. So a little bit of a downhill, you're going to get some speed, and then quick climb up. And then the good news is from there, it's pretty much all mostly downhill. It is a net downhill from the turn effectively up to the Chickamauga area. So that's a 14-mile stretch that is going to be nice and again net downhill. As you can see, there's plenty of little punchy things here where you are going up and down a little bit, but net downhill from that U-turn back to Chickamauga. And then once you make that turn to the west at Chickamauga, this stretch here, as you can see, it's about mile 40 to 45, so about a 5-mile stretch. It is split about 50-50 in a net uphill and then net downhill. That's this section right here. This is approximately this east to west from Chickamauga back to the route that's going to take us back into town. So just know here it's a little bit here. This is not particularly steep. It is it's a little bit longer one though. But then once you get to that point of elevation, it's downhill from there. So nice easy ride back into town. So from there, my recommendation is to um, not take in anything in the last 20 minutes. So for me, that's somewhere in the last 5 to 10 miles, kind of depending on the course. Basically, what I want to do is allow my stomach to kind of settle as I head into transition and then start the run. If I feel like I need something, I'll just get a quick rinse out. But so take advantage of that. So even that section that we were the first 5 miles, we were settling in through transition or out of transition. Now you can kind of spin out the legs. It's a good idea to match the cadence that you're going to be running. So most folks are running somewhere around 90 steps. Or a cadence of 180. If you can match that on the bike, that's going to teach your body or remind your body of what that feels like of that turnover. And then your legs are just going to naturally turn over at that same cadence as you head out of T2. Also, a good idea to think about what your T2 is. What are those things that you're going to do? What is your well practiced, well planned out, efficient transition? And then even thinking about the run. What are my thoughts for the first mile? What is my nutrition, my hydration, my cooling protocol that I'm going to begin? Just remind yourself of all that. Take advantage of that on this flat section as you are approaching T2. And then there is the little climb. Right as we came out of transition, there's that first climb. So the good news is it is a nice little downhill right as you head into T2. Speaking of, headed back into T2, couple tips here. They are exactly the same tips as T1. Be efficient, pack minimally, practice in advance, know exactly what it is that you need to do to transition from the bike to the run as quickly and simply as possible. And this isn't just about making up time. Sure, you can save seconds, maybe even minutes here, but it's also just a reduced amount of stress, things to do. Keep it simple, keep it easy. You've got enough going on, enough challenges racing a half Ironman race. So do yourself a favor and make this easy. Also have here that same Go bottle. The one thing that I do a little bit differently in T2 than in T1 is I will just include a little bit more. So my T1 bottle, I have about 6 ounces just because I'm not going to take that bottle with me. I don't have room for it on my bike. I'm not going to carry it. So that's just something I've got to take a shot of real quick while I'm in transition. So on in T2, I have opportunity to take more. So I will put about 12 ounces of water in there, have that same concentration of calories and electrolytes, because again, I haven't taken anything in about those last 15, 20 minutes to allow my stomach to settle as I head in. So if I'm feeling great, I may just chug that whole 12 ounces of water. But generally, what I will do is kind of nurse it over the first mile, or at least until the first aid station, when I can then switch over to the on course nutrition. So it kind of depends on how I feel. I'll carry that bottle with me until it's gone, and then I'll transition over to the on course nutrition. But again, just a great opportunity, even if it's plain water and electrolytes, water, electrolytes, calories, whatever it is for you. It's just a good opportunity to kind of sneak in a little bit and get ahead, just to alleviate the opportunity to get behind. Speaking of, we head out onto the run course. It is a two-loop course, similar to the bike in, I guess, definition or description. It's not flat; it has some flat sections, but I would describe it more as rolling with some climbs. And there are a few, kind of like the bike, couple notable climbs that you'll want to game plan for, and we'll discuss those here in just a minute. It is largely exposed to the sun, so not a lot of shade on this course. So kind of depending on the weather of the day, that can obviously affect both the temperature, the feels like temperature if you're baking in that sun, especially if the humidity is high, which is pretty common there in Chattanooga. You're going to want to make sure that that's all part of your hydration plan, cooling protocol, and all of that. So, as I mentioned, I would say there's four notable climbs on the course. You're going to hit Yeah, I guess you'll hit them all twice because it's the two loop. But this first one, you'll actually only go up once. So you'll come out of transition, you'll get on this path along the river, and relatively soon in that first mile, you're going to experience the first climb, and it's actually the longest one. It's about a half mile long. And it starts again less in the first half mile of the course. So kind of be ready. You're going to be hitting this half mile climb very early on in this, and it has up to 5% grade. So that's a pretty legit climb if you're familiar with those grades. And so for a half mile, now the whole half mile is not 5% grade, but there are sections of this half mile climb that can get as high as 5%. I would say most of it though is in that 2 to 3% grade. So it's a pretty decent climb. And then end up along the road. Nothing too bad along here, along the road. And then you end up on the path. This is where this is the flatter section. As you're back down here along the river, along the path, relatively flat. But then when you go from the path, transitioning back up to the road and before crossing over the bridge, this is where our second climb is. So this one, obviously, you'll do it twice, once on each loop. This one's a little bit shorter. It's about a third of a mile. And it actually has pitches up to 6%, so even steeper than some of those experienced on that first climb. This one's a little bit shorter though, so basically going from the river level back up to the road before crossing over the bridge. Then speaking of, on the back side of the bridge, this section over here on the north side of the river is where we'll hit the third climb. It too is about a third of a mile, and not quite as steep, but still pretty legit with grades up to 4%. And then crossing over the pedestrian bridge, again about a third of a mile of uphill. And once you hit the middle of the bridge, you'll begin to come back down on that backside. So kind of as I mentioned, you come out of transition, hit this first climb, you only go up once. These other three climbs, you'll obviously hit those on both of the loops that are done. And then kind of what's cool is what was a pretty good climb to start the run is going to become a really nice, really fast downhill to close it out. In fact, as I mentioned, kind of about halfway across the bridge is where the net downhill is going to begin, and literally it is all downhill from there. So that's going to be I'm guessing a little over a half mile out, so somewhere in the low 12-mile range. It's your kind of your work is over, and it's going to be kind of fun. Now, I will say some of these are actually steep enough where they can become a little bit difficult to run. So be careful, especially if you have any kind of foot injury, knee injury, things like that. You can burn up your quads pretty easy on some of these downhills. So just kind of be aware. Be aware of that. So, a couple of tips for the run course. One thing I like about looped courses is they provide an opportunity to really work on pacing. So, I always recommend a negative split on a course. Now, kind of depending on the layout of the course, this may not always be based on time or pace, but our energy expenditure. So, obviously, kind of taking these hills out, we can now pace on based on that energy RPE kind of a thing. So we want to start out relatively easy. I always say kind of the first half of the first loop should feel like you're restrained or even holding back. Now, as we mentioned very early on, you've got that pretty long half mile, pretty steep climb. So obviously you can only hold back so much on that, but we don't want to attack that first hill. It's more kind of get up to the top of that hill, come down, and then enjoy that flat section. Kind of as mentioned, have a nice flat section here. That's all this, both on the highway leading out and then the path, pretty flat. So take that kind of easy, just to settle in, get as mentioned the nutrition, the hydration, all that in. Hit those couple aid stations that are along there, and then for too long, you're going to experience this climb back up kind of to street level. And then from there, just begin to build. Again, there's you've got a couple climbs on this side, so you may even be slower. Your pace may be slower, your time may be longer on this half, but begin to put out a little bit more effort. And then as you begin that second loop, you've got a nice downhill to start coming off this bridge. You're already at the top of this hill, so you're not having to take that on. So you've got some nice momentum coming off of here, and then you're heading into that flat section. I would say this is where you really begin to really kind of push your pace. If you've held back through that first loop, feeling really good starting the second, and that's where you can kind of ruin that really good feeling by beginning to push your pace. Now, keep in mind you still got something like 6.5 miles to run. You still have all three of those climbs ahead of you, but you've also not you don't have that much of the race left. So as you begin that second loop, take advantage of that downhill, and this is where you can kind of begin to push your pace and smoke them if you got them, kind of a thing. So especially through that flat section. And then once you begin to experience these hills, you're halfway through the loop. So now you're just over 5K to go. So at this point in your training and racing, 5K is nothing, even with these couple of climbs in there. So that's where you can really go for it and let it all hang out. And then keep in mind that once you hit halfway on that bridge, once you kind of top out there, that's where it's literally downhill from there. So nice and fast without a ton of effort. I mean, your biggest thing there is almost going to be holding back on especially this section down here as you uh, head to the finish. I'll say it again: it's critical to stay hydrated and stay cool, even if it's cloudy, even if it's not real hot. I'm guessing that by your second loop of the run, you're going to be plenty warm. So make sure that you're staying up on hydration, nutrition, and cooling. And so I always recommend taking something from every aid station. So whether you are taking it in to consume or just keeping up with your cooling protocol, I always recommend taking something from the aid station. So for me, when I'm racing 70.3 or Ironman, my protocol is I take a gel at every other aid station. So as I come into that first aid station, I will take a gel and a cup of ice and a cup of water. I will pour the water over the ice to get it nice and cold, so that, again, working on cooling from the inside. Also, kind of rinsing down and working on the osmolality of that gel. So that's going to be that first aid station. So I'm not going to eat anything or take anything in at that second aid station, but I'm still going to take some ice and some water, pour that water over my head, over my face, maybe over my arms, and then shove that ice anywhere I can, down my kit, under my hat, wherever I can to stay cool. And then plan out those aid stations. Know what you've got, especially on the first loop. You're kind of paying attention to where they are, so you'll know on that second loop. Yeah, there's an aid station right around this corner, right around this curve. So know exactly what you need. And again, by the second loop, you may be taking stuff from every aid station, especially if it's getting warm. Um, it's ice water at every aid station. Or if you feel like you're getting behind on your nutrition, you need those calories, plan it out and know exactly so you can easily execute as you go through those aid stations. A couple practical tips here for those climbs. Be sure to drive your knees. That's kind of the biggest advantage in running on the hills, is to drive the knees as you're going up the hill. And the easiest way to do that is really focus on driving your arms through the magic of the kinetic chain. Your lower body is going to do what your upper body does. So that is kind of my focus when I'm running up hills, maintaining a good 90-degree bend at the elbow, give or take 90 degrees, and really working on driving those arms, which is going to in turn remind my legs and my knees to drive. So that's going to allow me to get up those climbs. And then be careful on the downhills again, especially as I mentioned, if you have foot issues, knee issues, it's going to increase the amount of impact. You can burn up your quads if you kind of go too fast down those. But also on those downhills, it's a good opportunity to recover. Driving those legs up those hills is going to cause the heart rate to increase, but kind of settle in a little bit and recover on the downhills, and then fuel on the flats as needed. So sometimes it's with that increased heart rate, it can be difficult to take in your calories and your fluids as you're going up, and then as you're going fast on those downhills. So take advantage of those flats. Uh-oh, I lost my slide here. Not sure what happened, but sorry about that. Basically, this slide was to remind you about the finish line. So, my recommendation here is to enjoy the finish. There's going to be a ton of energy as you head down that finishing chute. So I always recommend all the high fives. Really enjoy the finish, taking in, celebrate your day and your victory. So that said, we are getting close to our allotted time. So I got a couple questions here. Again, if I don't get to your question here this evening, my email address is there on the screen, john at tribetriathlon.net. Feel free, shoot me an email, and I'll be more than happy um, to answer any questions that you have. So about 5 minutes here, I will get through as many of these as I can in there. Hey, first question: do I need special gearing? I would say no. Again, the climbs on this course are not so long, so steep that your typical setup is not going to be fine. Kind of regardless of what you have, unless you just have a massively aggressive even a properly set up one by obviously is going to be fine. Even a one by with a standard cassette is probably going to be okay. But most folks are going to have the two rings. So even with that, it's this is not going to be so fast or so slow going up and down these that you're going to need to adjust your gearing, your cassette. If you're concerned about that, maybe it's a conversation to have with your local bike shop. Just let them know, this is what I've got. This is the race that I'm doing. This is the elevation. Do I need anything? But chances are you're going to be fine with the current um, gearing that you have. Now, if you were doing something like St. George, or maybe even like Lake Placid, Wisconsin, those kinds, I would definitely say check it out and be aware, make sure that you're good. But for this course, nothing. I would say in most cases you don't need special gearing. Should the swim stroke change depending on current? Not necessarily in this case, because either you're going to go from a strong current to no current. Generally, the river is pretty smooth, pretty calm. Where we would want to alter the swim stroke based on water conditions is more in like a larger exposed lake, ocean, bay kind of swim where you have swells, waves, chop, or you have a current that is anything besides a downriver current. So if you're swimming into the current or across a current, then yes, you would need to make some modifications to your stroke to ensure that you are maintaining good propulsion. But in this one, again, if anything, it's going to be a helping downriver current. So you can have nice big long strokes and get through that way. Will the swim be canceled? Um, no comment, I guess. There, it can be. It has not been in the past several years, but I guess again with all this rain in the forecast, that is one thing that could contribute to the swim being canceled. But I would say plan on going for a swim on race day. What if I get a flat? Always recommend being proficient in not only being able to change your own flats, but also kind of your basic mechanical stuff with your bike. Make sure that you're self sufficient there. Now that said, there will be neutral support out there on the course, but you're kind of at the mercy of where they are and when they're able to get to you. You may get lucky and they could be right behind you and see you get the flat and immediately pull over and help, or they may be miles away. So it could take longer for you to to get that. So definitely recommend being self sufficient and not having to wait on that neutral support. But worst case scenario, there will be neutral support out there. Bike mechanics they'll change those flats really quick. Um, are we allowed to have a large backpack in transition? Um, Not exactly sure what the official rule is, but more of like a common courtesy. As we said, we want to keep that transition area minimal, and part of that is keeping it clean. And the cleaner you keep your area, the better off it's going to be for those sharing the rack around you. You can see from those pictures, they pack in a lot of bikes. That area you have to set up your transition is not real big. So I guess you can leave your bag there at the transition area, but recommended would be to either hand that off to a member of your support crew, or something like that. But I guess worst case scenario, you could leave it in the transition area, but see if you can't find something else for it. And then kind of save this one for last intentionally with just about 1 minute to go. Any secret tips? I would say this is kind of an intangible, but race with gratitude. Have a spirit of gratitude as you go into this race. And one of my top tips that I love to share is I always recommend spending a couple minutes with your support crew, either the day before the race or maybe even the week leading in, and just express your gratitude to them. This could be your spouse, your kids, your training partners, your coach, all those people that support you and help you do what we do. It's I feel like it's a great idea to express that gratitude and then carry that with you into the race. And when things get hard, you're going to think about those people, and it's going to be a really great thing when you can think back on the fact that in the last day or two you expressed your gratitude to them. That's going to fuel you. That's going to keep you going, and that's just a great strategy to have. Going in. So that would kind of be my worst kept secret tip. I mean, I'll share that with as many athletes as will listen. So, all right, we're at time. So get to bed. Sleep is critical here in these last several days as race day approaches. Any of these other questions that I did not get to, I will respond to via email. If anything comes up in the next week or so, shoot me an email, john@tribetriathlon.net, and I will be happy to respond to you. I hope you guys have a fantastic race. I hope you have a great weekend there in Chattanooga, and I wish you all the best.